The newly released federal criminal complaint against the white supremacist top gunman is raising questions about the timeline of his prosecution and the possibility of the death penalty.
Right now, we are joined by legal analyst Chris Pannozzo, a litigator with O'Brien and Ford. Chris, thank you so much for being here this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just set this up. What is your overall reaction to this criminal complaint?
It's a large criminal complaint. There are 26 separate federal charges. The most important ones are the 10 charges of the hate crime resulting in death.
When it comes to the death penalty, you perhaps heard what Merrick Garland said today, that there are considerations the federal government has to take, and they also are going to be speaking with the families, which we know Merrick Garland did today. So he's going to be taking that all into consideration when the decision is made. Does it matter at this point, given the fact that there is a not so official moratorium that's been in place against the death penalty at the federal level?
Well, it's a very regimented process that Merrick Garland has to follow in this case. They can still ask for the death penalty. Whether or not it's ultimately carried out could be a different issue.
So you talk about that process. What is the possibility of this?
The possibility of the death penalty?
Yes.
Well, it depends on a number of different factors, as you talked about, the input of the victim's family, the horrificness of the crime, a number of other factors. It's really up to the U.S. Attorney's Office and ultimately the judge and the jury that would be deciding on that.
When it comes to the Biden administration, because that is part of why this moratorium exists, because it was not in place with previous administrations. So how much does the Biden administration and or the president or his staff have to do with making that decision ultimately? Because he could also advise or recommend to Merrick Garland, don't even pursue it. We're not doing this right now.
Certainly, that could certainly be a consideration in this case. Actually, from the July of 2020 to the end of the Trump administration, I believe there were 13 executions. Before that, there were none for 17 years.
Wow.
So when we look at this criminal complaint, why this instead of a grand jury indictment?
Well, this is what's called a criminal complaint. This just brings the suspect in this case into the court's jurisdiction. This is to hold him, to have probable cause to hold him for the purposes of presenting it to the grand jury for an indictment.
The likelihood of him seeing the outside of a jail cell is slim to none, likely, for the rest of his life, given both the federal case against him and, of course, the state case. Those two cases are running parallel, and that is something that can happen simultaneously, or will the state go first since they're further ahead in the process, and then the federal, or will they go simultaneously?
They can go simultaneously or together. Oftentimes it's worked out as to how the ultimate trials in these cases would be conducted, but they can go at the same time.
So what's next in these cases, both state and now federal?
So in the state case, the suspect has already been indicted. So there will be pretrial hearings, there will be discovery. In this case, it gives the U.S. Attorney's Office time to present it to the grand jury for an indictment like in the state case.
Do you think that there's a possibility that these could be merged? Sometimes the state will basically relinquish its role in its case and say the federal charges are substantial enough to hold? Or do you think John Flynn could say, or could be saying to his staff, or could be saying to Trinity Ross, I want this case, we're going to proceed with it?
Yeah, I don't see it happening where one would relinquish it. I believe that both the district attorney's office as well as the U.S. attorney want to have their day in court as well.
Yeah.
All right. Chris, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
All the time we have and sharing your insight with us.
Thank you so much.